Welcome to Eat Well, Travel Better, the Business of Food Travel podcast with Eric Wolf and Ashi Vale, where we help you become a better industry professional by gaining inspiration from some of the world's most successful people in the food and beverage tourism industry. With each episode, we meet these leaders and examine their secrets of success. We reveal the obstacles and challenges they have faced, along with their solutions and triumphs, and give you ideas and inspirations for many of the same business issues that you may be facing as well. And now for today's episode. I'm Eric Wolf, and I'll be your host today for episode 14 of Eat Well, Travel Better, the Business of Food Travel podcast. And joining me today is co-host Ashi Vale. Today we'll be speaking with Alison Burgh, a director at Acorn Tourism Development Consultants based in the UK. Alison is a lifelong traveler. Her love of travel and the experiences it can create led her to be in East Berlin running a music industry conference on the day the Berlin Wall fell, to being on stage at Wembley Stadium when Nelson Mandela was speaking to the world just 56 days after he was released from prison, and having lunch with Russian army generals and Roger Waters in the East German forests the day before staging Pink Floyd's The Wall in the Potsdamer Platz, 9 months after the fall of the Berlin Wall. Suffice it to say, she has had a pretty colorful career full of fascinating stories. Now in her consulting work, she works in emerging destinations such as Belize, Ethiopia, Guyana, and Zambia, working with local communities to identify ways to share their cultures and culinary traditions with visitors. Welcome, Alison.
Hello. Thank you very much for having me.
Well, it's a pleasure. Alison, I was reading a little bit about your bio and your history here. You've really had quite a colorful history with the music industry. And how does one make the transition from the music industry to tourism?
Well, it was not planned at all. Being in the music industry wasn't planned. It's sort of all of the jobs I've had have just sort of turned up unexpectedly. But I was working for 7 years in the music industry or television. We were doing multi-artist events for international television. And I then had kids, had a family, moved out of London, decided to stop work, bring up my children, and then started working a little bit, met a few people, met somebody who was a tourism consultant, my business partner now, Kevin Millington. I heard about what he was doing and thought, yeah, that's what I would like to do. And a couple of years later, we set up Acorn Tourism Consulting, and it's really grown from there.
Alison, it's great to be chatting with you again. I have fond memories of our time together in Ireland about 5 or 6 months ago, and it's just wonderful to be in touch again. I would love to hear, and I'm sure the audience would like to hear a little bit more about Acorn and what you do to help developing destinations.
Yes, we work with a wide range of destinations. We work in the UK and in Europe as well as in developing destinations, but that work is primarily funded through aid development programs with the objective of helping the lesser economically advantaged communities really and benefit from tourism. And the project we're doing at the moment, which is based in Belize, is probably a very good example of that. We have been asked to look at 2 areas of Belize, right in the south, Toledo, and also in the north, Corozal. Both of those districts only get 3% of the tourists that come to Belize, and a lot of the tourists are coming for the reef, they're coming for diving. Belize is, it's a wonderful destination throughout the country, but there are these sort of untouched, sort of hidden districts of it in the north and south. And we're working in the south, in Toledo, with a lot of the local communities there, and really looking at how they can attract tourists, but very much the types of tourists that they want to have there. So they don't want the mass tourism, they don't want the all-inclusive resorts. They want people that want to come and really appreciate their cultures. They have different communities, so they've got Garifuna communities, they've got Creole, Mestizo, the Mayan community are very strong down there, and it's really, we were looking for a way to showcase those different living cultures to tourists. And the way that we've done that is really look at their different culinary traditions as well as their cultural traditions, and use that hook of food tourism and that interest that visitors have in eating local culture, or at least the type of visitors that they want to have, that would want to attract Belize that would want to come and experience those different cultures and food experiences.
Speaking of culinary tourism, Eric, I don't even know if you know this, but I connected Alison with Chef Sean, who was on our podcast a few months
Oh,
ago.
excellent. Sure. Yeah, for sure.
And they had a meal together, and Alison was telling me about a dish in Belize that you really loved. Alison, can you tell us a little bit more about that?
All right. Yeah. Well, we met with Sean, who, it's great. He's like, great chef in Belize. And we asked him what the local traditions were, what we should be eating. And he talked about blackened corn and trying to remember the name of the dish now, but it was eggs or blackened eggs or black soup. That's what it was. It was black soup, I think. And
yeah, that's right.
Anyway, we went to a restaurant the next day, a restaurant we'd been to several times before and had sort of main and two sides, which was the standard menu. But the special of the day was black soup. So I had to order it. And I have to say, it's the best dish I've had in Belize. It was just delicious. It was made of blackened corn, and I don't know the details of it, but I know it had that taste of being something very different and very authentic, and just made us realize that if you've got that little bit of knowledge about what the local dishes are, the experience you can have in a country is much more enjoyable, much more authentic, really.
Yeah, it was really exciting to me to hear that, because one wouldn't think to order blackened soup because it just doesn't sound like something we've had before, and you're not quite sure what's going to be in it. But meeting a local and sharing it with him, and that's what makes you want to order it over and over again. And now I want to try it. So I thought it was just really a cool little story that Alison had shared with me before.
Well, for any of our listeners, that was episode 4, Sean Quillen, the No Barcode Chef. And that was a great interview. He's a lot of fun, funny guy.
He definitely is. Alison, so a little bit about the inspiring moment that led you to Acorn Consulting.
Well, I mean, I'd say Acorn just, I met, I think like all good business relationships, I met Kevin just socially down here, and we talked about what he was doing. I suppose a lot of the passion that I've got from tourism has come from traveling a lot in the past. I've been very lucky to have more than 1 or 2 gap years and have sort of taken career breaks at different times and traveled a lot, and strongly believe that meeting people and meeting local people is the way to overcome a lot of fear and misunderstandings about different cultures. Once you get to know somebody and have respect for them, you're much more open to that difference. And yeah, I've been lucky enough. I traveled in for a sort of year and a half through Southeast Asia and in Australia, and traveled. It's those travel experiences that I've had over the years have always made me very passionate about what one can do with tourism, and trying to get the type of tourism which can engage people in different ways with local people, be it through homestays or through meals and eating and sharing food and stories.
Speaking of homestays, was there an aha moment in your business when you realized this is what it takes and this is why it should happen?
Very much so, actually. When we set up Acorn, our office is based in a Sussex barn down in the southeast of England. And I remember the phone going and picking up the phone, and we got a lot of cold calls, and I got a call from somebody in India who said they wanted to have a partner. They were looking for a partner to set up a network of homestays in India. And I wasn't quite sure about who this was or whether it was a genuine call or not. So we started doing a little bit of work with this company, and just to see if we'd get paid and what it was all about. And from that, it developed into a 2-year project with one of India's largest international corporations, Mahindra. And we worked with them to set up India's first network of homestays across the country. That was a fantastic experience. I mean, the Mahindra were very committed to the whole idea of hospitality, and that these homestays were not so much about the buildings. They had to be hygienic, they had to be clean, but the people were trained to welcome people and really host them. for me, when I went to visit them, I just remember a couple of times. The first one in India was in Delhi. I stayed with an army captain, and I had lots of, it was a business trip, so I had lots of things to do. And he, I always felt he negotiated the local economy for me, because I think in India you either feel guilty or ripped off, and trying to find the right balance in between is quite tricky. And sitting, having meals with him and his family and listening to their stories was fascinating. And then getting on a train, going south, spending time with a family down in Kerala, with a completely different outlook. And there I had, my arrival at this homestay was very much a foodie experience. I'd been put on a train from Chennai to go and stay with these people in Alleppey, and I'd been put on the wrong train. The train didn't stop in Alleppey. I ended up somewhere completely different and had to wind my way back through on several different trains, and arrived completely exhausted. I hadn't eaten overnight. There was no food on the train, and all I wanted was a very simple continental breakfast with a bed and just to get some rest. And I sat down, and the charming woman who had picked me up and sat down with me and put this bowl of very runny curry in front of me, and I almost cried, to be honest. I just thought, this is not what I wanted at all. I just give me toast, something easy.
A full English breakfast, is that what you wanted?
I didn't even want a full English breakfast. I just wanted a piece of toast and jam and go to bed, and took one spoonful of this coconut egg curry, and it was just a delight. I can taste it now. It was just subtle and gentle and delicious, and it was magic. And I just remember that so vividly, because it just wasn't the dish I wanted, but it was the one I remember most.
How long did you work with Mahindra?
We worked with them for about 2 years. We looked at the different types of homestays that went from Raj palaces and through to community huts up in the Himalayas, and developed a whole website and brand around that. And it was really the first. And I think one of the most interesting elements of the research that we did for them is that we did a competitor analysis. This was about 10 years ago, and we looked at the different companies that were doing similar things, and there wasn't really anyone doing that in India really at the time. One little company that was starting to do something similar was called Airbnb, and at the time, we hadn't heard of them, and they were looking at doing hosting experiences. And I think, that obviously showed what the market was. We were trying to market the homestays into an environment where nobody knew what a homestay was. It was at that time that that whole idea of hospitality was quite new to that sector of accommodation. But I think the difference now is that was very much based around hospitality, and Airbnb has obviously grown and has become very much more, I guess, a booking site for different types of accommodation. But it reflects, I think, the way tourism has gone. It reflects that people wanting to meet other people and sharing home stories and meals is a lot of different travellers now want to find. And that's, I guess, where we're working with different communities to try and help them develop those experiences and make them appreciate that their own cultures are valued. And that's what tourists do want, but they don't have to develop something that the mass market wants.
That's wonderful to hear. Alison, do you have a major concern in the food and beverage tourism industry that you see? Is there something that you wish were different?
Well, I think it goes back to that same point that, there is a great temptation to, particularly for destinations that are looking to grow, and they look at what other people do, and they tend to look at the sort of more mass chains. They want the brands, and there was great excitement that the first McDonald's had opened in one of the destinations we were working in, and that is following a trend. And I think it's what we want to do is give local communities the confidence to really build on their own cultures and show them a way that they can attract tourists, that there are sectors of the tourism market that really want to share those experiences with them. And I think where we can get that right is the opportunity to encourage people to stay locally, for young people to stay locally in their communities and make small businesses out of those, and provide something that tourists will value, and not turn to the chains, which on the whole aren't going to bring any value to the local communities.
there's a bit of a disconnect really in that for the local people, they want the McDonald's and the Starbucks. It's almost a rite of passing. They've grown up and they're part of the modern world economy. But for the visitors, we want the authenticity, which the locals get every day, and they're probably sick of it. So how do you balance that when the locals want the chains and the big stuff and the travelers want the authentic experiences? How do you balance that?
Well, I think it's also giving, I think a lot of people feel that what they have isn't valued, isn't worth having. So I think understanding that there is a demand for it makes you value it. I think we all do that, wherever we live, we take a lot of what we have for granted. And it's not until other people come and stay with you, maybe from the outside, that they see things with different eyes and they're interested in what you've got. So I think one element of it is to get people to see that people want what they've got there, that they want the authenticity. And I think that generates a local pride in what people have. And I think if you're proud of what you've got, you're much happier to sell it. But I agree. I think there's, an issue where people themselves want something different. As you say, they want McDonald's, they want the chains, they want something more glitzy than other, sort of the authentic atmosphere that, some travelers want. And, but that doesn't necessarily mean they have to have it at home. They might be able to have that. You can combine the two in a way. They can go and experience that themselves in terms of what they go and do. Also just helping them to realize that they don't have to change everything that they've got, and there is a lot of value in what they've got there. And I think, in Guyana, we've been working there a lot. There are communities that, really value their own traditions. And I think that they may dress like Westerners, they may wear jeans and T-shirts, but they still value their own community experiences. And that was the message we got very strongly from Toledo in Belize, as well as in Guyana, that they may want other material comforts, but they don't want to lose what they have about their communities. And it's helping them find a way to retain that against a stronger flow of chains and brands and more Western commercialization.
Alison, that's really interesting you say that. I was in Belize, maybe a year and a half ago, and I spoke at their National Tourism Conference about food tourism. And what you were saying about the locals not really believing what they have, I witnessed that there. There were a few people who knew that Belize had interesting things to offer. It had its own cuisine or parts of it, between the different cultures that are found there. And then I met Sean Quillen and saw what he was doing to kind of celebrate Belizean cuisine and take it to the next level. It's through an icon like Sean that the rest of the country can see, oh, you know what, there's something to this. And some people may not find what he's doing completely authentic, but what he's doing is he's taking authenticity and embellishing on it. And it's interesting to hear what you're saying about your work in Belize, because when I was there, I thought there were quite a few people who still didn't feel that there was much to talk about, but there certainly was.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it takes something like Sean to dig out those things and the recipes and the ingredients and things that people have forgotten about. And I think that, interestingly, in the South, we didn't feel that, there is a real sense of pride there about their communities. And I think what, they were really excited about when we came up with this idea of doing a culinary map, culinary cultural map, which, I think in the West is, in the Western destinations, you're seeing a lot of them. Food trails there are lots around. It's not a new idea. But for them, once they'd seen it and they'd heard the idea, they couldn't believe they hadn't thought about it before, because what they really excited them was that they could all work together doing the same thing and yet still have something that was their own. There are a very strong, sense of community there, and people wanting to retain their own identity. The Garifuna community, they care about their traditions, sort of the Creole community and the Mayans, and they want their children to understand the cultures that they've grown up with. So it was, trying to find a way of pulling that together and that would appeal to the tourists without getting them all to do things that they didn't want to do and do something more mainstream. So, I think there is that strong sense of community in a lot of these places, and it's about finding it. And then balancing that with what visitors will want to come and do and spend some money on.
Alison, I couldn't agree with you more about the point you made about locals not realizing perhaps what travelers might want to see. And it brought to mind one of the genesis for Traveling Spoon when my co-founder lived in China. And she would tell them, I want to go see your market and check out the local veggies. And they're like, no, you don't want to see our market. It's, too wet or it's too messy or chaotic or whatever the reason was. And she's like, no, I really do want to go see it. And instead, back in the day, they thought that people would want to go to the jade factory and the pearl factory and would bust out big, large groups. And at the end of the day, it truly does come down to meeting with locals and having them realize what they have that's gold to other people that they may not know themselves. My co-founder really wanted to learn how to make dumplings from a Chinese grandmother and couldn't find that experience. And of course, now we offer that, but it's those sorts of things, just a delight to be able to experience when going to another region and experiencing their culture through food. There was a story that you shared with me a while ago about this food experience in Jamaica, which made me want to just hop on a plane and get there immediately. Would you mind sharing that with our audience?
Yeah, that was earlier this year. We had a family holiday in Jamaica, which was fantastic, and we were staying with some Jamaican friends there. And they said to us, we're going to go out for supper. We're going to a place to eat on the water, and we're going to have dinner on a raft. And, I guess we just sort of thought it would be a nice waterside restaurant and with a bit of a terrace, sort of raft-like terrace. And so we started to get changed. And I said, oh, no, you don't need to, we come off the beach. Oh, no, you don't need to get changed. We're going on this raft. And, okay, all right. But so we turned up and drove down this little lane sort of amongst the mangroves almost. And there, sure enough, in front of us was this raft that had been literally put together and with just beams of bamboo all tied together, with a little bench on it. And from there, we got pulled out to another raft that was sort of fastened out in the bay with this guy, Jerome, who had his reggae music playing, and he was very chilled. He had a barbecue set up. There were just handmade benches you could sit on. There were 8 of us, or maybe 8 or 9 of us on the raft. And he'd been out fishing in the morning. He'd caught some lobsters, and he fired up the barbecue, and we got out the rum and cokes and sat there in the sunset for an hour or so while the barbecue was going, and he grilled it up. He had the breadfruit, the pineapple. It was just amazing. I mean, he had the music going, and it was incredibly local, incredibly simple, and just, yeah, beautiful. Really quite a special experience, which, the local people who were with us as well as people we were staying with were sharing on Facebook, and all their friends were saying, yeah, we've got to get down there. Where is this place? So if anyone's out in Jamaica, they'll probably have to book up quite early now, so I think it'll probably be getting increasingly popular. But it was a very, very simple experience and great food, and thoroughly recommend to anybody.
Alison, is there an experience like that from our trip to Ireland? So just to give everyone the brief, we were working together with the Ministry of Agriculture and Tourism in Ireland to be able to promote rural farmers and artisans and cooks and their products to people around the world. And Alison's company, in conjunction with Traveling Spoon, was helping to do that. And we were in Ireland visiting people who offered everything from oyster shucking experiences to home cooking classes and cheese making sessions. Alison, is there an experience that you betted and went on that really stuck in your mind?
I think there are a couple, really. One was to a goat cheese maker, where we went around the farm and there were all the goats in the sheds. It was November, so it wasn't the sunniest. Well, it was a beautiful sunny day actually, but it was November. It was cold, and so the goats were in, and all the kids were there, and so it was a very hands-on experience with the goats. And then we just went into the farmhouse, and it was very simple, very Irish farm, nothing fancy at all, and we just chatted to the owners, and they brought out a couple of cheeses, and we sat there and sampled them, and again, just taste was fantastic. It was just a local experience with great cheese, which they sell around the world, and to be eating it in their kitchen with their goats outside was memorable. And I think the other one was going to the oyster shacking at the edge of the Atlantic, and with the flaggy shore oysters, which I'm not an oyster fan, I have to say. And we were there with another couple of people, and one of whom was French and adores oysters, so we had to try them. So they were opened up, and they had a whole range of oysters, of little ones to big ones, and I never opened them, and usually sort of eaten them under duress, or to be polite. But we sampled everything from the tiny little ones to the big fat chaps, as we called them, and with their different sources. And again, it was sitting by the Atlantic, watching the ocean. Not a particularly beautiful day, but it just felt very, very Irish, and just these really fresh oysters that they'd plucked out of the ocean, and seeing the whole process of how they were doing it was wonderful. And, you know, again, putting these experiences together so people that are traveling along the coast, traveling around Ireland can go and sample them was a real pleasure.
You have a really cool job helping to uncover these really delightful food experiences and working with governments to do so.
Let's bring this back around to lessons learned. And if you could give your younger self a single critical piece of advice, what would that be?
I think it would be to really have confidence in your own ideas and where they want to take, you know, where you want to take them. You know, however vague they are, if you've got an idea, to be confident about it. There are no real rights and wrongs. I think we go through school being told you something's right and something's wrong, and you know, if you've got an idea, then follow it and see where it takes you, and things change. And you know, I think having confidence in that idea early on is something that, you know, taken me a while to learn, that go with what feels right, really, and see where it takes you.
Did you wake up one morning and just realize that you were right after all, or was this more something kind of gained over time through osmosis?
Very much gained over time, I think. But, you know, I suppose when I look back, I think of things that, you know, I felt when I was much younger and wanted to do, but wasn't sure whether or not, you know, that was something I should be doing. I had a great bit of careers advice, actually. I mean, I've only ever had one bit of advice. And when I left university, I went to see somebody that was there, and you know, she asked me what I wanted to do, and I said, I've got no idea. You know, I've got no idea what I want to do. And she said, well, what are you going to do in July when you finish here? So I then listed a whole set of things, from being a chalet girl to working, traveling, and doing, I can't remember what, but a whole set of things I'd like to get done, you know, like to do when I left. And she said, well, you've got loads of things. And I said, well, but they're not proper jobs. You know, I don't know what I want to do for a proper job. And she said, well, just don't worry about it. You know, just as long as you've got a good reason for doing what you're doing when you're doing it, then you can find the next job. And when you've really got to worry is when you run out of ideas of things you want to do. It was a great bit of advice. You know, I took a career break when I was in my late 20s, having worked for Which Magazine, Consumers Association, for about 4 years, and wanting to get into something else. And I ended up traveling through Southeast Asia and Australia and working for consumers associations in Penang and Hong Kong and Sydney that I had no idea existed. You know, I could then write that up as consulting, you know, around the world, consumer consulting in these different countries. And, you know, it gave me more, that trip at that time gave me more ideas and confidence to go and do a whole range of other things. I came back from that and started working in the music industry, which is completely different from what I'd left behind. So, you know, that bit of advice of, you know, if you've got an idea, just follow it and it'll take you somewhere, and don't worry too much about it, you know, was, I think, excellent advice.
Along those same lines, Alison, what legacy do you hope to leave behind?
Well, I guess I just like my kids to have confidence in their ideas, really, and not be shaped by other people's preconceptions of what they should do and what they shouldn't do. And if you've got a passion, follow it. And if you haven't, just get on with something and see where it takes you. And, you know, out of that may come a passion that you can follow. Yeah, no particular legacy, really. I just want to feel that I've, you know, made the most of all the opportunities that I've been given.
Is there a quote that you like and live by?
Yeah. Just work hard, play hard. I think, you know, I think hard work, you know, creates the opportunities, and in between one's got to play hard and enjoy life as well.
So we'll see you in the clubs in London in the weekend.
Yeah, maybe the Ethiopian one that somebody told me about the other day.
Oh, there we go.
Have to have some injera first.
Exactly, yeah.
So that was your quote. So do you have a quote from someone else that has really inspired you?
Well, I don't know that it's really inspired me, but I heard one the other day that I quite liked, and I think, it's just small men don't know they're small, and great men don't know they're great, and I just think that sort of sums up the fact that you don't know what you're doing, you don't know what the legacy will be, but get on and do it, and don't worry about whether it's special or whether it's going to leave a legacy. Just do something, and if it turns out to be memorable, then great, and if it doesn't, enjoy the journey.
Sure. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense.
Is there a pet peeve that you have in business or in life?
Well, one of the things I love about traveling is that when I come back, I always feel I'm much more tolerant when I'm traveling than when I'm at home. And when I come back, I really appreciate what I've got here, and very lucky to live in a beautiful part of Sussex, and appreciate the things we have in this great country, despite all its problems that everyone moans about. And listening to people who've got everything, moan about minutiae, which I probably find myself doing most of the time when I'm here, is just such a shame. I think, and that's where the traveling, I really enjoy, because it just opens my eyes to what else is going on around, and also opens my eyes to what we all have, that we should make the most of it.
Shifting gears a little bit, do you have a favorite food you'd like to share with us, Alison?
Well, the one food I love more than anything is we have a lot of open fires and barbecues. We barbecue indoors in the kitchen, and my husband is a fantastic barbecuer. We cook on the fire most of the time, and he does a really mean barbecue salmon, which I would choose over anything else, and I've yet to find it replicated in any restaurant.
Alison, where would you travel next to eat?
So much choice. Where would I go? I think I'd love to go back to Asia, actually. I travelled a lot there many years ago, and I haven't been back for quite a while. I've been to India, but not to Southeast Asia. So I think Vietnam, Cambodia, that area is where we're thinking of going for a holiday in the next year. And I'm quite excited to go back there, and I've always loved their food. So that's high on my list.
Any country in particular, or just kind of the general Asia tour?
Well, Vietnam and Cambodia, Laos, maybe. I think we'd probably head for Laos. I don't know about the food there. I'd be interested to find out. But have a very memorable meal in Malaysia where we had yellow fish. We were sitting on the beach and ordered Mama's yellow fish, which was the only thing on the menu. And after 2 hours of waiting, I think, in the beautiful sunset, finally this fish turned up. So I don't know if she'd gone out to catch it or quite why it took so long. But again, it was a wonderful, memorable experience where that taste just lives on. So yeah, going back out to Southeast Asia and finding a few more excellent culinary experiences is top of my list at the moment.
If you're going to Laos, let me know. I'll send you some of my top recommendations. One particular one that stands out in my head is this restaurant that's called Papaya Salad Restaurant. And it's this little shack behind the main street. Cute little old woman who makes papaya salad all day. And it's quite different from what you would find in either Vietnam or Thailand. It's ribbons of papaya instead of tiny, like matchstick type strips. It's these long, thin, smooth, silky ribbons, and she tosses it in fish sauce and a variety of spices and herbs, and it was simply the best meal that I had in Luang Prabang. So just let me know when you go.
Well, I think you just sold it to me, Ashley. I think it's just at the top of our list. We've been trying to work out which one to go to, and I think Lao is top of the list, and now you've sealed it. We'll be there, and I'll be in touch to find out where to go and eat.
I'm buying my tickets right now. I'm already on kayak looking.
It's a stunning, stunning destination, and it's a little bit off the tourist path. Most people go to Thailand and Vietnam too, and they're delightful destinations to visit. But Lao is just magical in a very different way.
Yeah, well, I must admit it is top of my list. I was in, when I travelled in Thailand in the 80s, it was closed off really. You couldn't really go there, and so I hadn't been to that part of it. And yeah, Laos is high on the list. So yeah, that's a done deal.
Well, Alison, that sounds wonderful. I look forward to hearing your stories of your trip to Laos and perhaps getting there one day myself. Thank you so much for your time today. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
Well, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure joining you. And yeah, I'll let you know how I get on in Laos.
Thank you, Alison.
That's all for this episode of Eat Well, Travel Better, the business of food travel, produced by the World Food Travel Association. Join us next time where we learn from some of the world's most successful people in the food and beverage tourism industry. We'll meet these leaders and examine their secrets of success. We reveal the obstacles and challenges they have faced, along with their solutions and triumphs, and give you ideas and inspirations for many of the same business issues that you may be facing as well. Thank you for joining us today, and until next time, eat well and travel better.